Hello everyone, I'm Jeff Satinover. I'm a psychiatrist and a physicist. I teach at Princeton University and Rav Lightman and I have had a number of private conversations, and we thought that rather than having myself having the private pleasure of these conversations, we'd share some of them with you. I have a number of questions that Rav has agreed to answer, so I'm just going to jump right in and ask them to him and sit back and listen to what he has to say. So I decided that I'm just going to take advantage of this opportunity as though it were a private audience and there was nobody else here. I'm just going to ask you whatever I want. Okay. So, first question. What is the Kabbalistic understanding of what has happened to the relations between men and women in the 20th and early 21st century? And what's the view of what is likely to happen?
A man and woman should be together throughout their entire path of self-correction and reach equality of form with the upper force. In this, they complement one another, both on the material level in the life of this world, as well as in spirituality. Each of them has his own correction, and through the personal correction of each of them, and through the reciprocal correction of both of them, to come to the right kind of connection, and together they will resemble the upper force called the Creator. As our egos evolved in humanity, and every person individually, it provoked technology, evolution, science. But here, we suddenly ran into a problem that we've come to the last phase, and we see that here we are unable to control ourselves. We don't know how to move on from here. We do not want to belong to one another, to family. It's because our egos grew, and any person, not just with another person or one spouse or kids, people are unable to tolerate anyone next to them. The answer to that is that we will all be compelled to turn to our nature, to our ego, and begin to engage in it, deal with it, correct it. Otherwise, we will have to either start taking drugs, or commit suicide, or kill ourselves with terrorism or whatever. Of course, we will not want kids, we will not want a family. It's happening even today already. But all these things, in fact, prompt and compel us to ask, why am I living? What is my life? Is there a way out of it? And thus one comes to the wisdom of Kabbalah. On the other hand, it is written in the book of Zohar. It was written 2,000 years ago that at the end of the 20th century, when these conditions appear as we see them today, then the wisdom of Kabbalah will too appear and provide the answer as a means to correct our nature. And then we will reach another dimension and another life.
Does Kabbalah have a viewpoint about each individual's destiny distinct from other people's destiny? I understand the importance of the unity of human beings. Does it have a viewpoint about each human being as an individual and as a unique individual?
I would say this. The wisdom of Kabbalah in particular allows each person to be an individual force and develop it. First of all, regarding education. Kabbalah thinks that the only way to educate is through personal example. It is forbidden for anyone to tell another what he should do. Orders are forbidden, obligations, commitments are forbidden. But the right environment as an example, that's the only correct education. And that according to one's level of development, one will take that example and follow it. That pertains to education. With respect to individual development, it is written, teach the boy according to the boy's way. Meaning, we have to relate to each one and everyone according to one specific soul, one specific force, which exists in no one else in the world but him. And we think that all these souls are the sum total of one collective soul, in which we are all parts, integrated parts. And if that part is missing, even if a single part is missing in this huge collection, it will not be whole. And then we will not reach the purpose of creation. So, it is needed for each one to maintain his personal part, his personal development, so he doesn't lose his own orange root, his own root, and evolve in the best way that he can in order to prosper and evolve himself in his own unique way. So the wisdom of Kabbalah, the method of Kabbalah, enables each one to evolve without any pressure. There is pressure, there is a framework and conditions, but they are nothing to do with limiting one's inner development. The only limits are superficial, external things. Regarding freedom of choice, we have two primary laws in this: to follow the majority and following the individual. In corporate life on earth, our life as we live it, me, my family, my society, maybe my state, country, or the world. The law is to follow the majority, meaning in that I have to follow the majority. The laws that are worthwhile, that are chosen, they are created by the majority of society. But rather in spiritual development, you follow the individual, meaning each one evolves individually, and here there is no law and no pressure on a person. That system, if we could build that system around every person and around the society, would yield a very special development for each and every one, while maintaining a general global society. And these things are explained well in the wisdom of Kabbalah. So, to introduce, to compel a culture, on the culture of another nation or education is forbidden in Kabbalah. Everyone must have his own evolution, in his own time, without any pressure, and only through examples. That is why the culture and different modes that seemingly developed countries bring toward our seemingly third world countries, they don't benefit either the developed countries or the less developed countries. It doesn't benefit anyone. Through this, we only ruin people. We don't let them evolve in their own culture, in their own pace, and in their own rules. And that we distort, we twist the entire picture of humanity. And it comes back to us like a boomerang, producing the worst possible results.
Tell us a little bit about the nature of a tzaddik and his role in a generation.
A righteous man, the tzaddik, is a person who justifies the actions of the Creator, the upper force, regarding the entire creation. He justifies it because he comes to a state where he sees and feels the creation, the entire creation, not just the part that we see with our senses, but the forces beyond the five senses on an outer sphere. He sees them, and because he sees them, how everything works, and how everything influences our world, how it leads our world to a certain result, a goal. Because of this vision, he justifies creation. That is why he is called righteous, a tzaddik. He is called tzaddik from the word tzedek, which in Hebrew means just, justice. He justifies. So the righteous man, or the tzaddik, has to be a Kabbalist, one who discovers the outer world, the spiritual world, the world of forces, where forces are born, the plans that pertain to our world and come down to our world, which operate our reality. His nature is according to the degree that he's reached. We think that the wisdom of Kabbalah asserts that anything that we feel in our reality, we feel according to the law of equivalence of form. I have five senses. They are built in such a way that I perceive in each sense a certain range of reality. If I had an expanded sense, I would perceive an expanded reality. If I had additional senses, I would perceive reality in a completely different way, in different dimensions on which I have no idea about because I do not have them. But I can only guess, for example, say, if I couldn't have vision, what would I be missing? Or if I couldn't hear, or any other sense. So our limitations in the five senses and the range of each and every sense depicts our picture of reality. We cannot exit it. There is a way, though, through a certain method, to begin to see through this picture an outer picture of the forces that determine and operate our reality. And these forces that operate our reality, they are called the upper worlds. How do we begin to feel them? Through equivalence of form, that principle, that method. But how do we evolve? How do we develop the equivalence of form in a person? Meaning those qualities that exist in these higher planes, higher realm that governs our world. That we do not know, and we cannot know in advance. But those people who have already reached that and are in it, they give us advice on how we can reach it. And they say that through all kinds of actions we can gradually and slowly develop it in us this sixth sense, that's what it's called. Or otherwise it is called the soul, neshama. In that additional sense, we feel an additional reality which was previously hidden from us. That is why the wisdom of Kabbalah is called the wisdom of the hidden. When we feel that hidden reality by which the formula operates on us, the formula, its purpose, how it brings us to the goal, then we see the flow and to become part, and to begin to be in that reality. When we are integrated in it, we justify it, and then we are called tzaddikim. That's the meaning of a tzaddik. There are many degrees to that, 125 degrees, until one completely justifies the actions of the Creator. And everyone must reach the highest level. Each and every person on earth who reincarnates into this world, the process that we go through is in order to reach the highest level of righteousness. Through the recognition of the upper world and the reception, the absorption of these properties on the self by equivalence of form, by justifying everything. That is the goal. So, at one time, we'll all be righteous.
How does Kabbalah address the issue of human suffering, personal suffering?
I understand this question is very problematic and bothers everyone. How can the Creator be so benevolent, as they say He is, a higher force, a higher being, meaning He is higher than us, on one hand. On the other hand, our world is filled with troubles and afflictions. Is it coming from Him? And if not from Him, then from someone else? There are several forces maybe they're in a struggle, a fight. So there are many questions here.
And I don't mean it just in the. I don't mean just the philosophical question of the nature, but I mean really the practical approach.
There are several levels here. We'll start with the simplest one. We study the general reality, our desire to enjoy, our egoistical desire to enjoy. We want to enjoy, we want to fulfill ourselves. In the pleasure itself, which operates us, the entire reality on every level consists of only these things, in which Kabbalah are called light and vessel. The lack or absence of pleasure is felt in the desire as suffering. There is a lack of pleasure, there is a sensation of the desire to enjoy, and there is a desire of such a great lack of pleasure that it becomes intolerable. Of course, all these situations come from the upper force. Everyone suffers, the inanimate, the vegetative, the animate, and the speaking. Suffering is in fact the sensation that has to take place in the creature in order for it to abandon its situation and move on to the next one. Without it, there is no motion. Movement means I feel bad in my current state, and the next one I will feel better. That's why it seems more progressed, more advanced, and that's why I want it. I want that next stage, which I think is more successful than my own. So without feeling suffering, it is impossible to advance. And the upper force, the Creator, has no other way to promote us except for suffering. If He created us with an ego, with a desire to enjoy, then the only way to move us from one place to another is by giving us a sensation of suffering. The purpose of creation is to reach the highest level. And the only way to come to it, to come closer to it, is through enormous pressure to obtain it, meaning the greatest desire or the greatest suffering. It's not necessarily our physical, corporal suffering. We see that the world is beginning to suffer from things that are more seemingly spiritual suffering. It's as if we have everything, but something is missing. And that is the most painful degree, in fact, the most painful situation. So in order to advance, in order to exit the framework of this world, and start looking for something beyond, above it, we have to suffer. We have to feel that suffering, to experience it to its fullest depth, so as to demand out of that depth something against it, a good situation. It has to be a spiritual suffering, a lack of something. A lack of something that I need that is not something physical. I don't need more food. All these things exist in the world. So what's missing? The sensation of vigor, vitality, life. If one regrets that, then he will have the powers to demand something beyond this life. That is why we will see that in the near future, people will not be happy in the world. On the contrary, suffering will only increase, and in a seemingly more spiritual quality. On top of every abundance that will appear in the world, there will be a lack of satisfaction, the feeling of pleasantness, of good, of I feel good. Depression will spread throughout the entire world. The sensation of torment and sorrow will not let us continue living. It will bring the world to terrorism, to struggles, eruptions of all sorts of psychological and psychiatrical problems. All this is only because that on top of this material abundance, we need to discover that in this world we are missing the sensation, the force of life, and the wisdom of Kabbalah explains this process that has to happen nowadays. And if we start to go toward it, if we let the world understand this more quickly, what is the source of suffering, it's already a sweetening. He would understand that this suffering has a purpose. And if he knows about the purpose, it is easier. He begins to direct himself before he even goes into that lowest level of suffering, that deepest suffering. So, bringing the wisdom of Kabbalah before the world sinks into its depression is producing the remedy to the world.
What is the Kabbalistic understanding of the unique Jewish role in the world? And in particular, how do you see American Jews fitting into that picture at the present time?
Being a Jew does not mean belonging to the people of Israel. These are two different things because we are not a people, a nation. We do not have the same sources as all other nations do. Abraham the patriarch is called Avraham, the father of the nation. He was a Bedouin. He lived in Ur Kasdim, just like many other people there. He belonged to that people that were there. He was separated from that people because he started discovering the upper force. He became a Kabbalist. So because he became a Kabbalist, he built a group for himself that studied Kabbalah in that group, then expanded it to the dimension of a nation. They went to Egypt, they came out of Egypt, and this whole process of building the spiritual nation. And that's where we were till the ruin of the Second Temple. We were in fact on a spiritual level, and in fact the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, were a group of Kabbalists. That's what it was, men, women, children. They were brought up to know the upper force. And it's a wonder to see how they lived in the savage world of that time. That there was a huge gap between the nation that is known as Israel, that knew the spiritual reality, and the rest of the world that was in the material corporal reality. That was until the ruin of the Second Temple 2,000 years ago. There was a crisis of the ego, just like in the entire world, and also in that nation, group. And the people of Israel erupted into a dimension, into a power that didn't allow the people to remain in the sensation of spirituality. They started thinking about themselves, about pleasure for themselves. As it says about the ruin of the temple, that instead of love for thy friend as thyself, there was unfounded hatred that started, and as a result, the temple was ruined, and the people of Israel went out into exile. Just like it left for exile on the spiritual level, so it was exiled from the land of Israel to the diaspora, because one depends on another. If that group of Kabbalists is not in spirituality, then they do not deserve to live in the corporal land of Israel. It is written that, in fact, it is something that has had to happen. It was mandatory. Well, it says that the only reason that for the people of Israel went into exile was to add to themselves the souls of Gentiles, meaning to connect with those among the nations who could also accept the same principle of Kabbalah, of uniting and returning to be as one man with one heart and ascend spiritually through all the spiritual levels. Meaning the nation of Israel went out into exile and experienced the ruin in order to explain to the nations of the world what the wisdom of Kabbalah is, and to add to themselves those who can join them and come back with them to the land of Israel. And this is what is happening today. It actually started 100 years ago that the people began to return to the land of Israel. Baal Sulam explains it, who was the last great Kabbalist in the 20th century. He explains that this return was given as an advance to us by the Creator. He brought us here physically to the land of Israel so as to give us a chance from now on to ascend spiritually to the land of Israel, to the spiritual degree. And we have to do that. Regrettably, we are still not doing it, not performing this process, hence our deteriorating situation. At the end of the introduction of the book of Zohar, beginning from item 60 more or less through the end, Baal Sulam explains this process that the nation of Israel has to discover what Kabbalah is, its duty towards the world, why it is called the chosen people. It has to introduce this opinion to every nation. It has to correct itself first. It has to bring itself to a spiritual level and project to the nations of the world this method. And then the nations of the world will come to it. Those who want to join will start correcting and join the people of Israel. That process has to happen now. It is dependent on us how we would do it. In fact, Kabbalists have warned, even before World War II, that we must begin this process. There are many books and articles about it, about Kabbalists. But as usual, the people just won't listen. Even today, we are way behind in our duty toward ourselves, towards the nation, and towards the Creator as the chosen people. That's the meaning of the chosen people, to be a light for these nations. And we are still not doing it. Before we begin to take our role seriously, our situation will not improve, rather only worsen. Now, for the time being, we are unlike a delay type of period, We are trying to instill the wisdom of Kabbalah into the nations and into the world. And we see in the entire world how suddenly toward us there is demand of us. I am very hopeful we will succeed in opening up this method of correction for the whole world and reach adhesion with the upper force before we get into the terrible afflictions as we have 60 or 70 years ago. I hope so very much.